All right, so welcome everybody to the Fraternity and Sorority Life Alumni Panel, a COVID edition. Thank you so much for joining us. We are with some students who have recently graduated from our community, and so just going to spend some time chatting with them about what their job search process has been, how COVID has impacted things, and of course, how their fraternity and sorority experience, how they were able to use that to help market themselves in their job search. So my name is Trish Robinson. I'm one of the associate directors for fraternity and sorority life in our office. And I'm going to let Julia Pacheco-Cole introduce herself as well.
Hello, everyone. My name is Julia. I am one of the grad assistants in the office. I primarily work with our National Panel and Council and our Multicultural Greek Council with Trish.
So we are going to get it started by letting our panel introduce themselves. Then we'll ask some questions and then also have time for audience questions as well at the end. So feel free to use the question and answer feature at any point that you have a question that strikes you. So Julia, take it away.
Yeah, so if we could have each of our panelists tell us your name, affiliation, major, when you graduated, and if you would like your pronouns.
I guess I'll go. How's it going, everybody? My name is Trey Butler. I am a member of Kappa Alpha Psi Fraternity Incorporated. I just graduated last May, May 2020. I was a mechanical engineering major. Yeah.
I'll go next. My name's Lydia Schellenberger. I graduated in December of 2019. I was affiliated with Alpha Chi Omega. And is that everything? I currently am working as a pharmaceutical sales rep in Pennsylvania.
Okay, I'll go next. Hi, my name is Raval Patel. I was affiliated with Lambda Theta Phi, Lime Fraternity Incorporated. I just graduated in May with a mechanical engineering degree, and now I go to Purdue as a master's and PhD student.
Wow, that's impressive going to Purdue. I'm Mitch. I was a Phi Delta Theta. I graduated in May 2020. I was a marketing major, and now I work for Stewart Haas Racing, which is a NASCAR team.
Oh, thank you for sharing, everyone. And next, if you could talk about what you were involved with, both Greek and non-Greek.
Okay, so I was involved with multiple organizations, some being NSBE, National Society of Black Engineers, multiple exec boards with NPHC, my fraternity. I was also involved with Peer and Wise. I was a mentor for 3 years. I was also a tutor for 1 year, and other organizations like Brother, and I want to say that was it.
I was involved on the Panhellenic Executive Council as the Vice President of Recruitment, which is a 2-year position, which took up a lot of my time and didn't leave me much time to get involved in anything else. But I did do a little bit within the business school with like Kuma marketing and a little bit of sales stuff. So
I was part of my chapter's exec board for 2 years and MGC's exec board for a year. And I was also part of the rocketry team with the head of propulsion there, which kind of translates nice into my grad degree. And that was pretty much all I was part of.
I was originally, I started out as just smaller roles in my chapter, and then I was president of my fraternity, and then president of IFC. I did some small role stuff with student government, but other than that, it was mostly Greek focused. I saw a lot of Trish, Joe, Gary, you name it. So yeah, that was my involvement.
Thank you. And then one last introductory question. What are you currently doing post-graduation if you haven't yet said? So this could be your job or just involvements, volunteer work, anything that you're doing.
Right. So I have a job with GE Aviation. I know we're going to talk about it later, but it got bumped back because of COVID. So I've been in Greenville, working in Greenville for the time being, but I'll be leaving in January to go up to Cincinnati, Ohio.
I mentioned it a little earlier. I'm doing pharmaceutical sales in Pennsylvania, York, Pennsylvania. And that was a job I got a couple months after graduation. So we'll touch on that a little later as well.
Yeah, I also mentioned it earlier. I'm going to grad school.
Work for a race team, but specifically I work in the like sales side of it. I do a lot of marketing, data analytics on the way that people react to certain products or whatever it is. And then I also do like build pitch decks, and I do outreach and all you name it. You name it on sales, I'll do it. So.
All right, thank y'all. We'll start our questions. So first one, really just jumping right in of how was being in a sorority and fraternity helped, how did it help you in your job search? And if all of you could answer that, that would be great.
Sure, I guess I'll start it off. So being involved in a fraternity has helped me because when I travel, when I go to other conferences with these organizations, we have big career fairs and we have companies come in, and having that affiliation, whether it be my fraternity specific or my organization, I mean, not my organization, or my council, helps to create those bonds, create those connections. So kind of pitching, kind of making that connection with the employer was easier because I knew I had those connections on the inside. So just being able to travel and have that connection with strangers is something that, I mean, I couldn't get from other organizations.
Kind of piggybacking off of Trey, in addition to the network that you build through your affiliation and Greek life in general at Clemson, I think the leadership roles that I can speak to myself, and I'm sure everyone on the panel here was in, really helped build confidence in one, my ability to lead, my organizational skills, time management, a lot of different moving gears that really were put to the test with the roles I've taken in Greek life, and really helped shape me to be ready to enter a real world job. So.
Yeah, so I guess piggybacking off of both of them, I think all of their points were what I was going to say, but I think the biggest thing I would have to say is communication, being able to talk to other people, cooperate with them, especially in interviews, not being nervous, having the confidence to talk to people. I think that's the biggest thing that I got from fraternity and sorority life.
Yeah, and kind of to touch on the interview stuff, I think that a lot of what you get in Greek life, which you get in some organizations, but especially is either working with the school or working with your advisors, you name it, people who are older than you, and being able to pick up the phone and call them and say, hey, like, I need to do this, this, and this. And that's kind of mini interviews while you're in Greek life. And then eventually, like, especially when you're sitting in the interview chair and they ask you like, hey, what are your objectives if you were to get into this role? And you kind of have a lot of practice doing those things because you're thinking, well, when I was in my role in Greek life, it was, what are my objectives to accomplish throughout this year? So you can kind of like break things down and say, well, I'd want to do this. How do I get that done? And here are my like 2 steps or whatever it is. And I feel like it gives you a lot of confidence to answer those questions. So.
Thank you. And we're going to talk a lot about transferable skills, but I was wondering if any of you had any examples of when a chapter or council position has had any direct transferable skills into your grad or job roles.
I can speak to that in terms of overcoming adversity. I think that in the roles that you take throughout Greek life leadership positions, or in general amongst your chapter, whatever that looks like to you, you're given a lot of responsibility, and there's a lot of real not issues but situations that are brought to the forefront that you're responsible of having a hand in dealing with and fixing and organizing. So I think that overcoming adversity is a skill that I really built up over my 2 years on panel and exec. And I think that that was something that really helped me have some grit during the job search of COVID. And I'm not sure if I see some head nods, so I'm not alone in that. So that would be the one that's probably coming to the forefront for me right now.
I think one of the big things, and it kind of touches on the handling adversity and being able to like enact change, is a lot of the things you deal with in Greek life are different than in a sports team, is way different than a problem like a hazing. But at the same time, when you walked into a role and you said, hey, I don't know much about what I'm getting into, but you can kind of assess what's going on. You say, here are the problem things that I want to focus on. I think when you step into like an IFC role, you're like, all right, well, we want to talk about hazing. We want to talk about problems with parties, whatever it is. But then when that translates to when you're in your big boy or big girl job, then you kind of focus on things like, all right, who was in my position before me? What did they get right? What did they not get right? What do I want to focus on? And then how do you make the entire organization improve and also have the organization improve as a whole as well. So.
Yeah, I think for grad school, the biggest thing that was transferable was teaching. I was an educator for my chapter for a semester, so having all the new incoming members and being able to educate them really helped me out in my grad degree, where I have to sometimes teach people how to use equipment or teach people how to do a certain process. And maybe in the future too, I know I'll have to TA classes, so.
So I hear multiple of you have kind of talked about the skills. And so the next question really leans into how did you market that, right? Like what did you say to market your fraternity and sorority experience? And I think that's where we see a lot of our students struggle, is they have all this like knowledge and expertise of being in a chapter and involvement, but then don't know how to put that in a resume or don't know how to talk about it in an interview. So do any of y'all have any examples of how you marketed that experience, words you used, how you talked about it to help you in your job search or for graduate school?
I think definitely pushing it towards the working as a team, working as a unit, because being in a job role, it's not going to be just you. You got to be able to work with people. So talking about your leadership positions in your organization, talking about the obstacles that you had to overcome, that's stuff that companies like to hear. They like to hear, how did you face adversity, like Lydia was saying, how did you face it and how did you overcome it with the group, not just yourself? So bringing that back to your organization, how do y'all overcome y'all issues together, not just alone?
Yeah, I was gonna say something similar to that. I was gonna go more off to conflict resolution. I know that everyone in every chapter has some issues with their members or some issues with the chapter, and being able to like give a story about how you had to discipline someone, for example, or you had to talk to someone, or just get something done and tell someone to get on their stuff. So just coming up with stories during interviews for that is really great.
And I would say more from Trish said something about verbalizing it or marketing it. I would say like quantifying your experiences. Like I know within your leadership roles, like if you managed a certain amount of money, and whether it's in a Greek life role or any role that you're in on campus, like mention that, like be proud of that. If you managed X amount of people, or you whatever the number may be, like really putting some action words and quantifying what you did to put some power to your actions is definitely something that helped me when interviewing.
Yeah, I think another thing a lot of people talked about, like confronting issues, and I think a lot of times when you're in a Greek life role or any role, you tend to find yourself putting out a lot of fires. When like something comes up, you kind of just figure it out, then you move on. And I think one of the one of the main things I talked about in my interview process was when I was in these roles, a lot of times you were focused on something would pop up, you'd handle it in the best way possible. And the way that I wanted to move forward and kind of learn from that is to say, planning and understanding what you need to get done helps you a lot more in the long run to be able to say, all right, I may have to put out some fires, but how do I think about things that may come up in the future, and therefore have a plan and say, hey, this is the goal I want to get to in the end, and kind of be able to move through that. And then when something pops up, you say, well, how is this getting me to whatever your objective was that you started in the beginning? So
I think that's a really good segue into the next question, which is how has COVID affected your job and graduation experience? Because that involves a lot of adaptability, right? So if we could answer that question.
I guess I'll speak on that. Um, COVID definitely threw a curveball at everybody. So for like the May 2020 grads, of course, everything kind of got like pulled up in the last minute. So, fortunately enough, I got my job before COVID. I got it November last year. So, unfortunately, they had to bump me back. So COVID did push back the start date. It did push back like when I was supposed to be going there, the program that I was trying to get in. But fortunate enough, the company has stayed strong. I've managed to kind of start my own business here while I'm home, to try to like keep me going in the time being, and then just trying to stay busy, trying to stay in my school because I know I want to go back to school. So COVID definitely threw a curveball, but I mean, that's life. You learn to adjust, just like with our organizations. I mean, you get thrown with challenges, but what are you going to do? Are you going to complain, or are you going to pivot and figure it out? So
So I kind of had a little bit of a roller coaster as far as jobs go. So I interned with the company I'm now working with, but that is the end of the story, not the beginning. So whenever coronavirus kind of shut everything down, and no sports were playing at all, and I'm obviously in a sports team, but like it was, hey, we don't have any jobs, we're laying people off, don't even think about like knocking on our door. And so it was all right, well, how do I refocus, reshift? I applied to a bunch of other jobs, ended up getting another job that was across country. It was like, all right, well, this is what I'm going to do. I have no idea what the plan is. Nothing. And then I wasn't really excited about it. You're definitely nervous, you're anxious, like you're trying to like stay healthy at the same time. And then I got a call that was like, hey, like we're firing things back up again. Like, are you available? And then it was like, well, you have to elaborate on what do I want to do? Like, where's my headspace at? Like, I was going to move here, now I'm moving there. Like so ended up kind of having a little bit like of a come to faith moment where it's like, you call your parents, you call whoever it is, that's just your rock in your life. And you go, hey, what do I want to do? Or where do I want to go? Like, and I think that's whether it's looking for a job or looking for anything, it's like, you need that person to call to figure out what you want to do. And that definitely threw a huge wrench into my plans. And there was a lot of sleepless nights, but I'm in Charlotte. I have some roommates and having a fun time on my job. So at least I'm one of the lucky ones, I guess. But
So I think the biggest thing for me is I have to do all my classes online. So first semester at Purdue, and I haven't even stepped inside of a classroom yet. And I think that's the hardest part, is being able to learn everything online. And you just don't keep up with classes. And I'm sure the kids in here also know, all the college students in here probably know too. It's just hard keeping up with classes when you're doing everything online and there's not set due dates, and it's not a schedule like it was for undergrad. In terms of the job side, I also had to get a job to fund my grad school too. And getting a job with the university was pretty difficult. I think I got lucky and I got it about 2 days after I started the semester here. So But I know a lot of other kids around me have not had the same luck as I've had. So COVID's really thrown a wrench in a lot of people's plans.
I kind of had a similar story, but like opposite as Mitch. I actually was planning on willingly moving across the country for a job that I was excited about, but they actually ended up going on a hiring freeze and weren't even able to officially extend me an offer. So it was kind of in limbo, and like with just the state that our world's in right now, you can't really bank on an in limbo contract. Ended up getting an offer in my hometown that was a better opportunity professionally. So took not a sacrifice, but decided that that was more secure and important than it was to move across the country right now. And I'm here in my hometown still. So that's where we're at. But COVID definitely threw a wrench in the plan, but I think everything happens for a reason. So
Yeah, thank y'all for sharing that. I think that's why we wanted to start with this one, is just, especially we wanted like May grads, December grads, because you both were kind of on very different, like the front end before you knew it was coming, and then the like, I know it's here, what am I going to do? And so kind of piggybacking on that question, how or do you think COVID has impacted your like path for the future, right? This is like a temporary, fingers crossed, situation that we will eventually get out of. Do you think it will have long-term impacts on your future? Or what are your thoughts around that?
I think it definitely will. It will in my field specifically. I'm going into aviation, so I mean, as you've seen, travel has just kind of been not halted but affected. So in my field and at my company specifically, they've laid off I think 30% of their workforce. So I know going into my position is kind of high risk because there's really no room for error. So with my career moving forward, it's all about how can you best perform? How can you save us money? This, that, and the other. So I believe COVID really threw a wrench, but not just that COVID, but I mean, there's always going to be that fear. Will there be another thing like COVID? So I think all companies will have to prepare for that situation in the future because nobody was ready except for Zoom. So, yeah.
I think one thing that is definitely interesting is at least in the sports and like sports marketing industry is obviously you have a lot of companies that are struggling, but what's weird is a lot of time or like in some ways we've shifted to focusing on a lot of companies that have done well. So and it sounds kind of weird to think that companies have done well, but it's like we've had a lot of conversations with more discount companies, grocery stores, cleaning products. Like it's it was one of those things that was like, all right, like who are we even going to talk to? Like nobody wants to talk to people to talk about sports. Like that is on the last like little part of people's mind. But I was like, wow, there are some industries that are doing well. And I think a lot of graduates when they're coming out, it might be, hey, I'm not going to get the flashy job or the job I was thinking about that I was going to get, but maybe you focus your efforts on like a P&G is definitely still hiring, but I don't know. It's so that's just kind of a little bit of advice, I guess I would say, is to look at the companies who are doing well, and those people will be very receptive to hiring people. So.
Yeah, I think my answer is kind of along the lines of Trey's because we're both in aviation. And I think short term for me, I'm more on the defense contracting side. And the biggest hit for us is reallocation of government funds. So I know there was a lot of hiring freezes, especially with defense contractors and aviation people. And that's because the government's been shifting their funds over to medical, and it's been really impacting our industry. And that's one of the reasons why I started thinking about going to grad school at the end of last year, was because the jobs were just drying up and I wasn't able to find anything. So I pulled the trigger and went to grad school instead.
I think like outside of my industry, just in terms of like COVID and like the life plan, I guess my biggest advice is just being adaptable, which me as a person, it's really hard to do because everyone likes to have a plan and likes to have a structure and kind of try to stick to it. But I think that kind of what Mitch was saying, being strategic in your job search, thinking about industries that maybe are booming, not booming now, but doing a little bit better now, even if it's not an end goal for you. Just remembering that, you know, any job, I mean, you don't want to be flipping through a ton of jobs, but any job can be temporary and the world is unknown right now. So just really being strategic and putting your energy into the right things would be my advice for this unknown path that COVID's taking us down.
Thanks for sharing. And speaking on the rise of Zoom, do any of you have any tips for interviewing over Zoom or just speaking with jobs or grad schools over Zoom in general?
I kind of have a funny one, I guess, or kind of funny, but it's when you talk on Zoom, and especially if you are in either a panel discussion or a group discussion, I would say make sure if you're in an interview that you have your idea that you're going to say planned, because the second that you talk, your screen is the one that pops up the biggest. And so if you pull up and you don't really know what you're going to say or how you're going to say it, and you're not deliberate about it, then you're going to be on the forefront of everybody, which can be a good thing or a bad thing. It can be a good thing if you come out and you kill it, then everybody's like, wow, like that guy popped up on the screen and said the right things. So that's kind of my comments on that, I guess.
I would say Zoom wise, this sounds silly, but wear pants in your interview, and nice pants. You never know when I had an interview with my job I have now that had me stand up and introduce myself, and I was wearing pants, but I've heard horror stories of people in sweatpants or other articles of clothing that when you're asked to stand up, it's not doable. So that's one thing, always be prepared for the unexpected. It's still an interview. And then two, I know I stuck sticky notes to the back of my laptop with little reminders. Granted, I was interviewing for a sales role. So there were some keywords I wanted to use when I was role playing and things like that. But that's kind of the beauty of Zoom. They don't know what's on the side of your computer screen. Granted, you don't want to be reading a script. But don't be afraid to give yourself little reminders or even a little pep talk sticky note. So
I guess this can kind of be generalized, but just know your audience, know who's on the call with you. So if you're interviewing multiple people, try to know okay, this is this manager, this is this HR person, so that you know who to address, who's listening in, and then just try to know who you're addressing. And that goes for any interview, even outside of Zoom.
All right, so thinking about, I know we have some of you who are in grad school, some who are wanting to go back to grad school, some who went straight to work. If you're comfortable, would you be willing to share how you chose between grad school and the workforce, going straight into the workforce?
Yeah, I can start. I kind of touched on it earlier, but I knew I was graduating in May, so I started looking for jobs at the end of last year. And by the time that interviews and job offers started rolling out, I didn't get the companies that I specifically wanted. But as a backup plan, at the first semester of last year, I had already applied to grad schools because I wasn't 100% sure on what I wanted to do at the point. And then the more I looked at it, the more it made sense due to the hiring freeze and getting my master's. I knew I wanted to do that, so I just went ahead and got the master's while the job outlook was bad.
I'm kind of the opposite. So me and Javal have the same path. We did mechanical together and we want to go into aerospace together. However, I looked at it. I started applying to jobs at the very beginning of my senior year. And I was fortunate enough. I went to Pittsburgh for a conference, for engineering conference, and I got the job there. So that was in early November. But I knew I wanted to go to grad school, but I was the kind of person where I wanted the company to pay for it, because a lot of these companies will pay for it. So you just kind of have to get there and then express your interest and then work with them. So fortunately enough, the company that I'll be working for, they have a grad program. So I'm working with my boss right now to get me into the grad program that got pushed back also. But definitely was always in my head. It's just I kind of went the opposite way. I wanted the company to see if they had that program and then let the company rock through that.
Oh, go ahead, Mitch.
Okay.
Hit it, Mitch.
I would say in a more general grad school going into the job force type conversation, I would say kind of make your plan of priorities and like what you're trying to accomplish. I'd say there was a couple of my friends that definitely were I don't know about grad school, I don't know about job search, and they kind of didn't plan the right ways into what they wanted to do, and then they kind of either they just applied for a grad program or applied for a job they didn't like, and I had like one person go into a job they didn't like, one person go into a grad program they didn't like. So it's kind of like make sure you kind of have, here's my priority one, here's my priority two, and what do I want to accomplish. I was a person who wanted to just dive head first into the workforce no matter what it was. So I kind of went that route. But if you're, hey, I really want to go to grad school because it's going to open up opportunities in whatever field it is, then kind of be planning for both outcomes, and kind of set your, hey, I want to do this, I want to do this, I want to do this, and kind of list them in order. So then therefore you have a plan. Even if the first one doesn't work out, you're like, all right, well, I'm already planning on applying to these schools or whatever it might be that you want to do. So
And I think too, just I want to make one point. I think it's important, right? You have to know yourself and like what works for the industry you want to go into. Are you someone, if grad school is part of your industry, who needs to just go through it because maybe school's not for you versus someone who needs the time off? So I just want to make that point because I know we have 4 of you on here who are in different paths and whatnot. But that you really have to take the time, as Mitch is saying, to figure out what's going to work for you, where you are in life in that moment, where you're trying to get to, and also just what you're ready for at the time. So thank you. Just wanted to add that.
Yeah, and kind of like looking at paths and how we got where we are. If you're comfortable sharing, what was the most difficult aspect of your transition from undergrad to post-grad life?
I can go first. So I think the biggest thing for me is the amount of time I'm dedicating to school. Undergrad, it was fun time dedicating to school in terms of fraternity and FSL. But now it's more of I have to do a certain amount of research a week. I have to go to classes, and I came into grad school thinking, oh, I'm only taking 6 credit hours. I don't have to do much, but it was a big shock to me when I realized that 6 grad hours were a lot different than 6 undergrad hours.
I guess I would say with the workforce, the level of adulting is real. It is no joke. It's exhausting. I think that in addition to like there being within my industry, like industry specifically, there's little like things that are different about it than maybe before COVID, but that make it more tiring. I just think like the pace of work, your work days, your preparation during the week for your work or during your weekends, like the Sunday scaries are almost worse in the professional world. I will say that. But in a good way, like you feel motivated and you want to take on the week and be ready for the week. It's just a different kind of pace. So I would say that was the hardest thing to adjust to, like the 8-hour work days.
I'd say also when you're stepping into that work week, it's not as comfortable as when you go to class and it's all of your friends. It's all these people who, I mean, at least with me, I'm the youngest one in the office by about 15, 20 years. So it's kind of, you have to walk in and you're like, all right, well, it's not me when I'm with my roommates, kind of like we all hang out and watch Netflix and do whatever. It's like, nope, you walk in, like you're professional, you're talking to like people who are wearing their suit, they got like all their stuff going on. You're like, all right, well, it's a way different pace than when you would walk into your like 10 a.m. on Monday and you kind of stroll in, you're like, oh, like getting the week going. It's a heck of a lot different for sure.
Trey, were you going to say something at one point? I saw you unmute yourself, so I just wanted to check.
I was going to, but I'm gonna just hold it. If I had to say anything, I would just be like time management. But I mean, you kind of get that in undergrad, but definitely time management. To wake up every day and not go to class is weird at first. It takes a little bit of adjustment, but once you start working, once you start really getting into like your career, whatever it might be, it's time management because it's different. So yeah, that's the only thing I would add.
Thanks. Not to put you on the spot. I just saw it. What advice would you have? Do you have for first time job searchers? So folks going into it now, trying to figure out like, what the heck do I do? COVID is still very real. Like, what advice?
I'll jump right back in with it. Don't like spook yourself out of it. Don't be afraid to apply. You'll be surprised what you can get. I mean, I remember applying to like hundreds of jobs, hundreds, and I might only get a couple callbacks. You never know. So don't like spook yourself out. Apply. You can't get it if you don't apply, but also network. Talk to the people you know. Talk to the people that are in the industry. See what connections they have, because a lot of times that's how you get into that position. So, and just having confidence. So when you do sit down and try to network or try to interview or try to secure an interview, really sell yourself, really put yourself out there and just show them that you're passionate, show them that you have a plan, and don't be afraid of messing up. You know, just be yourself, be genuine, and just don't spook yourself out.
I'd say apply for jobs that you really want to work for. Kind of going off Trey's passion thing. If you're not really passionate about the job that you're interviewing for, it'll show in the interview because you won't have as much interest, and that could just be like a missed opportunity for networking later. You know, someone already has a bad rep because you weren't passionate about the job that you applied for. So yeah, just go into every application like you want it. Make sure the job that you're going to get is the one that you want. Otherwise, it kind of goes back to what Mitch said about planning for your life, right? If you have goals and you get the wrong job, you're not going to meet your goals.
I'd say definitely talk to, like Trey said, like as many people as possible. I can't tell you the amount of people that I've known that'll be like, hey, I got this guy that wants to, or like would be willing to talk to you about whatever industry. And they're like, like I don't know if they really want to talk to me. And then maybe it passes them by. I've had some people, it'll pass them by, and you're like, man, like really, like they never called them. And then there's some people who will call them and they're like, man, like that went really well. And like even if it's not a job opportunity, it's, oh wow, I could really use that in an interview. Or hey, I'm in my job now and I remember I talked to this guy. Like I want to call him now and see what he's doing because I think it's interesting to what I'm doing now. So just to piggyback on you, Trey.
Thanks. And then last kind of like thing on those lines, if you could go back and give advice to yourself as an undergrad, knowing, you know, where we are now, what advice would you give yourself?
Oh,
Go ahead if you want to go.
oh no, you go ahead. You go ahead. I'll
Okay.
mute.
If I had to go back, I'd probably tell myself just to enjoy my time in the moment, because I mean, we all remember when everything kind of got uprooted. I kind of was like left with feeling like I didn't have any type of closure. So just enjoying that time, do as much as you can in that moment. So whether it be like go all in on your classes, go all in like organizations, get involved, do internships, co-ops, try to get it as early as possible because you never know what could happen or what may happen. So I always tell myself, like, if I didn't have that job back in November last year, I probably wouldn't be able to find a job now in my industry. So there's many things that you can't control. So just in the moment that you're in, try to make the most of it.
Yeah, I was gonna say something along the lines of it's okay to fail. Even lately, I just never, when I was in undergrad, every time I failed, I was just like, oh God, what do I do now? And I started panicking. And I think the biggest thing that I would tell myself is to slow down, reorganize your thoughts, and come up with a plan of attack. And that's just something that I struggled with as undergrad, but now I have quite a good bit of experience.
Anybody else?
Definitely get involved. Just pick any club and just do it. It'll be fun, and even if it's not, then you'll learn what you like and you don't like.
Great. So, oh, go ahead, Lydia. I'm sorry.
Sorry. I would say like this is kind of what kind of piggybacking off what everyone else just said, but just in terms of job shadowing, like if you have the opportunity, I don't know with COVID right now what that's looking like, but in your industry, if you have the chance to like, because internships are great and some are better than others, but if you have the chance to actually like shadow someone that's doing what you think you would like to be doing, or maybe something you think you wouldn't want to do, but have the chance to get that real life like shadow experience. Sorry, my family's all talking, getting everybody. They're really loud, but I would say job shadow as much as you can in as many different industries as you can.
Thank y'all. So that was actually our last question. We're going to turn it over to if there are any audience questions. Now's a great time to put them in our Q&A box, and we will ask our panelists. You're welcome to direct a question to a specific person. So we'll give it a hot second to see if anything comes in. And yeah, so sit tight for us. All right, so like first question, I think piggybacks off of something Javal said, but how do you or did you stay motivated when facing rejection? If you faced any rejection?
Go ahead, guys.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I think the biggest thing you need to tell yourself is that it's okay, and it happens to everyone. Even talking to, I recently just failed a course for the first time, so, and it wasn't because I messed up or any, oh, I did mess up. I just missed an entire test, and so I think the biggest thing I learned over like the past couple of weeks is to let it go. You'll have another chance, even if you feel. I got rejected from so many jobs, but at the end, I'm a firm believer that everything will work out as long as you put your mind to it.
Yeah, so just kind of piggybacking, just having a game plan. Don't let it like discourage you. Just kind of knowing this is what I want to do, and I'm not going to accept anything else other than it. So, like I said, I applied to hundreds of jobs, and every year it was a struggle to try to land a position. I mean, and you kind of question yourself, like, am I qualified? Am I not good enough? Don't do that. Like, you just got to go out there and just somebody has to be willing to take a chance on you. And if you get that chance, prove them right or prove them wrong. Do whatever you have to do to like make sure that you secure your position.
And I will say I'm in a sales role, as I mentioned, so I'm rejected like 90% of my day. It's just rough out here, but I will say that I think it's important to like let yourself acknowledge the moment and like what you're feeling because it's real and kind of like I think Trey said it, it's normal. Like rejection is normal. It's obviously unpleasant, but really give yourself that moment and then bounce back. Don't feel too sorry for yourself. So I guess that'd be my advice.
All right, so one more question that came in before we wrap up. Are there any resources at Clemson you wish you would have taken advantage of?
Yeah, I never used the co-op office. I kind of went my own route. I was like, oh, I can get my own job. Probably not the best decision because all my friends that jumped into the co-op program, they got co-ops, and I'm over here fighting for an internship. So definitely the co-op program, Hendrix student, I think it's still in Hendrix. Just like getting them to like help you out, even if you don't want to do a co-op, they have so many connections right in there in the student center. So if I go back, I would definitely try to work with that program a little more rather than kind of being me and saying, oh, I can do it. So
Talk to your professors for sure. I learned how to learn to do that like my fall semester, my senior year, and I think that a lot of times there's a little bit, not the fear aspect, but you're kind of like, oh, it's my like they teach like that's not what they're like. They don't want to help me get a job, all this whatever, but they really do. Like that's a lot of times the main purpose of why people started like working at a school is to help students like excel in their careers. It's actually the reason that they're in their careers. But and I think you'll find a lot of times you'll find a mentor in a professor that you may not have like realized, or maybe you didn't even, maybe you weren't even on the same page when you took their class, but you just reached out to them and say, hey, like you knew a lot about this and I don't, and how can I learn from you? And they'll take that meeting 10 times out of 10 and they will help you out more than you will think that they ever will. So
Okay, we had another really great question. How did you guys deal with the cycle of trying to secure internships or jobs, but each of them asked for previous experience? So you were trying to get your first experience for the said internship or job. That whole like, you're not ready for the job, you don't have experience. It's like, well, I'm trying to get the experience. How did y'all deal
Um,
with that?
I can say I didn't have any previous sales experience, but I knew I wanted to get into pharmaceutical sales. Like I was like headstrong. And I think having the confidence and being able to, first of all, I practiced like talking up my resume, like practice in the mirror, practice with your friends, your family, like getting asked questions and really being able to pitch what you did. Because I guarantee you, the fact that you're on this shows that you care and you're on the right track to be successful in your professional career. So I guarantee your resume is worth pitching and worth someone taking a chance on. So have that confidence. That would be my bit of advice.
you got it.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I was gonna say something along the lines of what Trey said earlier, I think, or maybe it was Mitch, but they said to get involved. There's a lot of organizations on campus. For example, I was part of the rocket team, and before I had job experience, that was the number one thing I would say about it. It gave me the engineering experience that they were looking for, and it just helps out because you also get into leadership later on.
One thing that I would add, and it has to do with your resume, but it mostly has to do with just kind of where you mentally are when you're preparing for that interview. If you're walking into it and you know I may not have the job experience, I may not have the resume to prove it, there's no comparison to heart. And when you walk in there and you say at the end of the interview, like they ask you, oh, any more things you want to say, and you tell them straight up that I want this job more than anybody else that was in the line behind me, then that'll go way further than the one community service thing you did. Those are all great, but when they hear that you're going to step in and you are going to work your absolute hardest because you know you want this job, then they're going to say, huh, there was something special about that person. And I think that's kind of what led me into getting my job, and I think that can reign true for a lot more people in other industries and other experiences too.
And just to kind of cap off what everybody else has said, I think the most important thing in going into an interview, the company is going to look and say, is he teachable? Is she teachable? Are you willing to learn new things? Because they know that you're not going to know everything coming in, but they had to be able to teach you that. You had to be able to learn that new stuff. So going in there and showing that you're a hard worker without the experience can go a long way. I mean, nobody's going to have the experience day one. So just going in there, showing that you're passionate, that you're willing to learn, you're willing to ask questions, and just never give up. That's going to take you a long way rather than having a stacked resume, because not everybody's going to have that, especially starting off early.
All right, so I think that was our last question. So Julia, if you want to wrap us up. Thank y'all so much for being here, panelists. I think this has hopefully been very valuable for not only our attendees, but others as we, are able to share this in other capacities. But Julia, take it away.
Yeah, thanks everyone for coming. Thank you panelists for being here. This has been a really great program. I think really informative. Yeah.
Appreciate you having us.
Yeah, thanks for
Thank you,
having us.
everyone.
Thank you.
Good luck.